Okay, thank you. And then to the chair, what was the voter turnout in Colorado? It's referred to that they're third nationally. Ours was only 25%, but what was
Yeah, there's a
theirs?
chart in
In
here.
fact, I looked through everything. I couldn't find it.
I know for the November election, it was, let's see here. Okay, yeah, so
but
the chart,
if we're comparing apples and apples, I'm just interested in,
all right, eligible voters in November was 54.5, and California was 30.8 of eligible voters. So obviously that number's higher if you look at registered voters for both states. So the charts here, it's in this report.
it's
At
in
the back of the
that very-
packet. Yeah,
okay.
it was the nonprofit vote, America Goes to the Polls. It's
Yeah.
the final report at the back here.
Okay.
And there's a great
Okay.
state voter turnout
And do
ranking.
we also have data on how many eligible voters actually register? Because if you get into who's eligible, if only half of them actually register and then only 25% of those actually vote, you're getting a,
Yeah,
yeah,
well, and that's,
very-
and I know, for example, in California, so they have us here at 30.8% of the eligibles. Of the registered voters, we were 42%. So, so there was a, 11-point gap.
gotcha. Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, and then of course, in LA, of the registered, it was only 31%.
Yeah.
So for the eligibles, I think it was down at 25 or 24, something like that, or maybe a little lower 20s. And that was for a gubernatorial. I mean, the last city council election, I think, was at 6%, 7%.
Wow.
So, and this is the thing I learned in Colorado. The interesting thing is they have, we've been talking about this whole consolidation issue. I asked the folks in Denver, if you vote every election, how many elections will you typically vote in a 10-year, in a 4-year cycle? And they said something around 10, so quite a few elections. And even the lowest turnout elections are 25% turnout, whereas in LA, they're 6, 7, 8%. And then of course for the presidentials, even though ours are higher, theirs are even higher. So that's why we're looking at it. But certainly you've done a good job, I think all three of you, raising concerns that we would want to make sure to address if we were to move in this direction. So I really appreciate everyone's input. And
I just have a question for the chair too. Is this the only model you're looking at? What is Oregon doing?
so Oregon has gone to they've just done an all registration and an all vote by mail model. And I'm sure some of the panelists will have some comments on that system, especially Ted. We're looking at everything. I mean, we've been talking a lot to
Okay.
NCSL and others. I think we found ourselves most intrigued by this Colorado model. A number of us, Alex, but I've been talking to folks from NCSL and getting reports from other states. But I'd love to hear the panelists' thoughts on. I mean, you're all experts in this area. Are there other states that you think we ought to be paying particular attention to? What do you think about the Oregon model? Love to hear your thoughts.
Well, the major concern for us is that that we maintain and protect an individual's right to cast an independent and a private vote. And in a lot of scenarios for people with disabilities, that's just not going to happen with a mail ballot. They're not able to fill that ballot out themselves. Their choice can be called into question. Fred Neeson, from Disability Rights California, who's testified before this committee before, tells a story that his has been called into question. He's a voting rights attorney. I've witnessed it in a polling place here in Sacramento, so it does happen. So we would not support anything that would take away our availability to use an accessible voting machine and have the frequency of location that people with disabilities can get to that machine either on election day or during the election period.
I mean, I know you're both big-time election junkies, so I'd love to kind of get your thoughts on other states we should be looking at or not looking at.
Well, and I think there's parts and pieces that might work in some of the other states. The thing with Colorado is it's kind of a comprehensive package that kind of covers all aspects. I think Astrid kind of hit on the 4 different areas that it covered. Where Oregon might have something great with their number of ballot boxes or this mobile voting that I think they do, or it could be up in Washington, that might be something that gets added to this. But really looking at the language of Colorado law is kind of just comprehensive to a packet, and I think that's probably why it draws more attention than some of the other states.
Yeah, I think my perspective is a little bit different. Again, this is my opinion, not a position of my organization. But in general, I think what we've discussed and what we've seen is that California is such a unique state. We are so incredibly large, so incredibly diverse geographically, ethnically. The work that registrars do to meet the needs of all voters really needs to define what a California model is going to look like. So I don't think we can necessarily find a solution in another state. We can be inspired by them, but California is going to have to come up with its California model.
Good. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to the panel. Well, next, so in fact, that's a great segue because our next panel looks at the way that California currently deals with various aspects of the Colorado model. So we're actually going to be hearing from 5 different county registrars. So if they could start coming up, we've got Gregory Diaz from Nevada County, Neil Kelly from Orange County, Jill Levine from Sacramento County, Dean Logan from LA, and then Michael Vu from San Diego. And they're all going to talk about various aspects of the Colorado model that whether it be printing on demand, ballot on demand, printing, et cetera. You'll hear from each of them. This is a real brain trust that we've been able to pull together here today, and we'll be asking them a lot of specific questions. So really appreciate everyone being here today. Let's start with Mr. Diaz from Nevada County.
Hey, good morning, Chair.
Good morning.
Members of the committee. Thank you for the invitation to speak. Up in Nevada County for the last 2 elections, we've used electronic poll books. Fascinating, effective, great technology as far as I'm concerned. In June 2014, we operated a pilot. We had 20 precincts using the electronic poll books. In November 2014, I used the electronic poll books countywide. I would like to state paper rosters were still printed. We still abided by California Election Code requirements, and the paper rosters were used alongside the electronic poll book rosters. I have a white paper, I have a couple flyers, but in the interest of time, I thought I would just list a bunch of bullets that we thought were effective and benefits, real-time benefits for our office. Benefits for our office operation by using the system. There was a reduction in staff time uploading the rosters and applying voter credit. No need to scan the rosters by hand. The election management system we have in our office has all the information for the voters. We were able to upload that information into the electronic poll books, and we did this the Monday before the Tuesday election. So we didn't have to print regular rosters. We didn't have to print supplemental rosters. We waited until the last possible moment, which was noon on Monday, and all 60 electronic poll books were loaded and distributed to our precincts at 5 p.m. the Monday before the election. Dashboard technology, better monitor and manage polling places. When the electronic poll books are in a connected state, I, in the office, can see exactly what's going on in the different precincts. I can see the traffic. The electronic poll books are going to monitor the traffic. I'm going to be able to monitor the ballot stock. I'm going to know how many ballots were dispensed, what ballot types were dispensed. I'm able to make sure polling places are open in time. We know when the electronic poll books will be turned on. So the management of the polling places is greatly enhanced by the use of these electronic poll books. Voters were redirected at polls without having to contact the elections office. Each electronic poll book would have the precinct information and the precinct voters, but we're also able to load voters countywide into the e-poll books. So if a voter comes in and the poll worker cannot find the name on the precinct roster, touch of the button, we go countywide, the voter pops up, we're able to redirect the voter to the correct polling place. Higher level of accuracy, reduction of human error, both in the office and at the polls. Great reduction in telephonic traffic. All the poll books, we were able to customize them for our county, and we have prompts for each situation. If a new voter comes in, if a vote by mail voter comes in, the poll book is going to instruct the poll worker what to do, and believe it, the poll workers loved it. They just loved it. I was a little concerned about training, the sort of digital divide that we find all over. But I think in the last 5 years, there's been a lot of digital acceptance. Training was a lot easier than I envisioned. Poll books were distributed to our poll workers, average age 74, 75 years old, and within 10 or 15 minutes, I think it was the prompts. When they knew this was a very helpful device, there is some digital acceptance going on now. The training was a breeze, and within 15 minutes, by 7:15, the phones just stopped ringing. The poll books were able to answer questions that the poll workers may have, and I'm a little nervous chicken walking around. How come the phones aren't ringing? But the rovers would call in, and there was a lot of acceptance and good use of the e-poll books at the polls. A reduction in the number of temp workers, and most of that was during the canvass period. Updating voter history is electronic, plug it in, and what would take us normally 3, 4, or 5 days was done in an afternoon. We had the ability to gather and generate reports, which helped us better manage our polling places. The reports, at the end of the day, if I want to know and understand the traffic flow, the poll book could generate the report from 7 to 8 a.m., this many voters came in. From 5 to 6 p.m., this many voters came in. And there's a lot of freedom in developing the type of post-election reports that you think might be helpful for your operation. Obviously, a reduction in printing paper rosters, a reduction in provisionals. And most of that was the ability to direct voters to their correct polling place. Previously, we would just offer a provisional ballot to those voters if we couldn't find out. How it changed Election Day for us. Election Day became quieter and smoother since the implementation of poll books. The poll book prompts, I went through that, just providing the guidance for poll workers and reducing the opportunity for error. Easy uploading of voter rolls into poll books, expedited downloading of voter credit into our system, and that eliminated a lot of scanning. We used to scan the paper rosters to update voter history, no more. So it's just huge time saver for the office. Training for poll workers was a little longer. There were just one more thing for them to learn, but as I mentioned earlier, they really gravitated toward the use of these e-poll books, and at the end of the day, it was something that they really accepted. Implementation issues that you had to overcome. With the elections, obviously, there are a lot of logistical decisions, when to deploy the poll books, who delivers them, who will pick them up. So it's just important for management of the elections on a countywide basis that you think through those issues. One thing that happened perhaps 6 weeks before the election, we thought it might be useful to have what we call a mobile device management system. If a poll book decided to walk away, what are we going to do? So we were able to deploy, we call it an MDM, Mobile Device Management System, and that proved to be very effective. None of the poll books did walk away, but if they did, we had an answer for that. And we are looking at more polling place connectivity. And as we explore and delve more into the technology, the polling place connectivity, I think, is going to be really useful. If the precincts are connected, I'm going to know if Joe Blow voted in North County and then 4 hours later tried to vote in South County. With the connectivity, we're able to update the electronic poll books in real time. So obviously, that's going to be a great deterrent toward voter fraud. And statewide, we're looking forward to having that information as well. So not only within the county can we deter this type of activity, we can deter this type of activity if we're connected to the statewide voter system, which is possible with this technology. Faster election night reconciliation. Obviously, if a polling place has ballots at the end of the night, the fatigued poll workers have to account for each and every ballot. No more. Poll book does that for the poll workers. So we were able to get results in maybe 90 minutes sooner than we had. And all the elected officials up here and the elected officials here, we know how important that is in these days to get the quick results and to have results posted for the candidates and for the constituents. Poll workers reported the average time spent processing a voter decreased. Setup and closing were easier, and every one of our poll workers, I'm glad to say, considered the e-poll book to be a helpful tool. No real negative responses from the poll workers. I did send out a post-election survey. How to keep costs down. One thing I was very adamant about was trying to get off-the-shelf hardware for these e-poll books. Previously, the companies, of course, they have their proprietary hardware. They want you to spend money. We just used the Samsung Note 10s. It was a good size for the poll workers. I think the deal we got was from Walmart, under $300 per. And once the county procures the hardware, they can be used as single-purpose use, which I'm doing in my office. We're just going to use them for elections. But I have heard some counties will use the tablets in different ways. Let's see, what the system can really do, but we're kind of not currently allowed to do, but just like to state a little bit of a vision. The poll books have the technology to support a completely paperless system, as they can capture electronic signatures. Once in a connected state, we can redirect voters via Google Maps, which has worked really well. Again, monitoring all the polling places from one location at Election Central. If we're all connected, we're able to maintain an accurate up-to-the-minute roster. And right now in California, and this kind of really worked well, we did it at a couple polling places. California, we have to have outside rosters, and they're updated every hour. We have to put a paper roster up, and you'll find people scrolling through the paper for whatever reason. With the e-poll books, we're able to have scrolling rosters. We invested in a large 24-inch monitor, and it's up to date, and it's inside, and we had one outside, and there were 10 people by the scrolling roster for whatever reasons no one chose to go to the paper roster. So again, just how the technology can benefit the voters, benefit poll workers.
Thank you.
So
ask you to-
I know 5 other people need to speak, so that's it.
No, really appreciate it. Just so I get a better sense in my head. These were connected through Wi-Fi, to the internet, or they're hardwired? No, they're.
Yeah, they weren't hardwired. They were, we did not, in our 2 elections, have them connected. Okay, that's something we're looking forward to doing. But at the polling place, they were connected to a printer. So when the voter would sign the e-poll book, we could then print out a label and affix the label with the signature to the paper roster.
But when you're saying that they had access to Google Maps and all that kind of thing,
And once they're in a connected state.
okay, so you.
We did not deploy that in November.
Okay, I got you.
We've done it in the office,
All right.
but I have to take baby steps.
Well, but there are aren't there cybersecurity concerns associated with putting them in a connected state?
Our IT department that we're working with has not identified those concerns. No,
Okay.
being in a connected state.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, and we'll have a chance for us to all talk about ask further questions. So let's move now to Neil Kelly from Orange County.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee for the opportunity to talk to you this morning. I'm going to focus my comments a little more broadly on vote centers in general, and I'm also the president of our statewide association of election officials. So I want to give that perspective as well on the vote center model, and not as specific as my colleague, Mr. Diaz. Larimer County in Colorado, started using the vote center model in 2003, long before Denver did, and they were seeing much success in increasing voter turnout and election day efficiency. Although Larimer County, with approximately 200,000 active voters, is considerably smaller than many California counties, the benefits are significant. For instance, and I know you've heard a little bit about this already, it provides additional convenience for the majority of voters, shows to increase voter turnout. All ballot styles are available at each vote center, allowing eligible voters to cast a correct ballot at any vote center. Cost savings are large in some cases. And political parties and candidates need fewer volunteers for poll watching, which is something most people don't think about in that kind of a scenario. We in Orange County operated early voting centers 30 during presidential election for the last couple of cycles. And so we've been operating a mini vote center model right there in Orange County and have tested a lot of these issues such as connectivity and how to workflow for the voters, et cetera. But as has been discussed in length, voter turnout in California is an important concern. The Colorado model provides insight into the effect of vote centers on voter turnout. This is important considering that voters turn out when voting is convenient. Even as voter turnout in California has dropped, the ratio of vote-by-mail voters has dramatically increased, as has the percentage of no-party preference voters. The trend is indicative of the attitude and expectations of today's voters, and I know all of my colleagues hear the same things, and I'm using an anecdotal quote, but we don't want to be tied down to a specific day or place or prescribed list of candidates. We want to vote on our terms, and we hear that a lot from voters out on the street. As busy as we all are, it's easy to see the genesis of the trend. With all of the benefits, the vote center model should be seriously considered as one step in the reformation of the voting system here in California. We recognize this is a transformative time, and we are hopeful that a cost mechanism and some uniformity can be built in to whatever model is adopted. However, the approach towards such a fundamental wholesale change must be cautious and measured in order to ensure that serving voters is met prudently. I serve as the vice chair of the Board of Advisors for the U.S. Election Assistance Commission, and the commission has established a guideline for vote centers. And it's actually very helpful reading because it kind of goes through that whole list of what Colorado's looked like in Oregon and Washington as well. Determining the right locations for vote centers relies on several factors, including federal and state law regarding accessibility and language requirements, building occupancy limits and parking availability, proximity and ease of access to voters being served, and projected voter turnout for each election. Election officials are already facing these requirements with polling places, but the vote center model would require large-scale changes in the way facilities are recruited. Just I want to touch briefly on concerns about vote centers, and I know we've heard a little bit about that already. The distance from a voter's home to the vote center is a prime concern for voters with disabilities who may already be taking multiple bus routes to vote on an accessible machine at their polling place. Language communities are concerned about vote centers serving tens of thousands of voters in highly concentrated ethnic regions and the availability of sufficient bilingual staff and signage to meet the community's needs. Although the general trend is to abandon polling places, there are communities that are well served with local neighborhood polling places. So seeing that formula of having drop-off boxes is encouraging, and we hope to continue that dialogue with your committee. Election officials are accustomed to great changes happening all at once, and as the Secretary pointed out, we're preparing for the statewide implementation of VoteCal in 2016, which will enable same-day registration and pre-registration. And additionally, and I know I've said this to you before, Mr. Chairman, but voting systems purchased with HAVA funding are ending near of life, and we know that's a concern across the country as well as here in the state.
We're not even in compliance yet.
True. Good point. We're ready to be a part of these historic changes, and I am pleased to see that a measured approach is being considered and that the bill targets January 2018. As election officials, at the end of the day, we will be the ones implementing this or any alternative to Election Day polling places. So I'm very grateful that you're engaging us in this conversation. Because when the rubber meets the road in terms of implementing on the street, we're the ones that are going to be doing that. We believe that the transition should be measured and the rollout well thought out. We anticipate valid concerns from organizations and individuals who are concerned about voting and are invested in the process. On paper, the vote center model could save, and this is where I want to get in the weeds a little bit for Orange County as an example. We could save, based on the model right now in SB 450, we could save about $1 million in operating costs right out of the gate. And I know cost is not the only factor being considered here, but I thought I wanted to make sure to get that out on the table for you.
Right.
Pair this with the anticipated increase in voter turnout, and the direction we should take is clear. California is poised and ready to continue leading by using this proven model. As the president of our association, I established the Voting Opportunities Committee, which is working with the Secretary of State. That committee has been working very thoughtfully over the last couple of weeks, and our hope is that by the first week of June, we have a packet that we can deliver to your committee with our recommendations from the association, kind of really getting down into the weeds on each specific issue as it relates to voting centers. Our committee's been collecting detailed cost data using several options, such as different formulas, vote center ratios, drop-off alternatives, et cetera. So our association finally is looking forward to further engaging with you and your staffs to ensure successful implementation that will surely benefit the most important stakeholder in these discussions, the voter. And I'm actually very excited, Mr. Chairman, about the opportunity to reform elections here in California, and having gone through mini vote centers in Orange County, it is fully doable. I know there's a lot of challenges and logistics we need to work through, but we're prepared to start moving in that regard. So thank you.
Good. Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Registrar. I appreciate that.